I built and released a web application from scratch, alone. And coding wasn't even the hardest part. It was everything else that people generally don't talk enough about: security, setting up permissions on cloud, legal, business email, etc. Before we dive into all of those topics, let me show you what I've built. All right, so this is the app. It's called Hex. Let's sign in. And this is the dashboard, just a quick showcase. Before I can build my app, I need to map out requirements. I need to understand the scope. Okay, now let's look at the actual requirements. This is how I approach them. So I have this document MVPMD. So this is basically my roadmap. I used it to avoid scope creep and not just add random stuff, make myself think before I do something. And it has all the things that one might need, right? So user authentication, account management. So for example, user sign-ins has email and password authentication, and session management default 24 hours. So this was acting kind of like my Bible, right? To help me not deviate from path. And then it has other things like question submission form, what each thing is supposed to be doing. This is how I did it. And I went as far as having technical requirements or security requirements right here. And even schema validation, right? Have schema validation and then use that for schema validation, all those things. And you could also use AI to help you flush out those requirements. And that's what I did. I've got requirements out of the way. I understand what do I need to build. But how do I make sure that what I'm building matches those requirements? How do I make sure I'm building a quality product? Now, let's talk about quality assurance and how we can assert it early on. Here we have an API endpoint, API/questions. This endpoint, as you can imagine, returns questions data that is mapped to a user. Before we even write any tests, there is a schema. The shape of all data is defined in one spot, and it's like a blueprint and basically allows me to control everything that goes into my application, everything that gets submitted to the API before it even makes it into the database. Schema validation is a preventative measure against defects. Let's look at technical examples. We have this API here, post. This is when an authenticated user submits a question to a registered user. And so we can look at the schema, and this is right here in this file. And so whenever we are submitting this, whenever our application is trying to accept this data, we're going to make sure that the question that is getting submitted matches this blueprint. So before any of the data makes it to the database, you have already prevented a large amount of potential issues that could occur. Now I will show you the actual testing part, starting with unit tests. I've put in unit tests for main services on the backend here. Nothing crazy about it. This is a standard industry practice. And so this was pretty much one of the earliest types of testing that I decided to add. And basically, this is one of the tools that allow me to iterate faster down the road and get feedback fast in case anything breaks. Next up, API tests. Probably my favorite type of automated testing. API tests allow me to ensure that data is being passed correctly in my application, that it is also in the correct state. And API tests really help me validate that the data passing works in the application correctly. One of the things that is great about this is that it really saves me time on manual testing effort. So I don't have to test or retest everything via user interface. We have here, for example, links API test. This validates that the API that handles links in this application, the generation of links and all other operations works correctly. All of the quality gates and tests need to run somewhere. Let's talk about CI/CD pipeline. CI/CD stands for continuous integration, continuous delivery. It also can be continuous deployment. It depends. And I think deployment is its own separate topic, so I'm not covering this in this video. Now, having tests and code quality checks is great. It's amazing, but there is not much use to them if I don't ever run them and if I don't use them in some meaningful way. So let's look at the pipeline. We're here in GitHub Actions. And for non-technical viewers or people not familiar with GitHub Actions, we have different stages here, and each stage has a variety of jobs that I define. All of this runs on GitHub servers or on their machines, and also these jobs execute different processes. We have two of them, right? We have a stage called quality and we have tests called quality. Checks my code for basic errors. There's a security audit that I've added here. And then obviously we check if the app builds, and this allows us to surface most of the issues with our app. And then there are tests. They also run here. You can run them locally, but you don't want to constantly having to do that. Now on GitHub Actions, you have just seen a basic CI/CD pipeline, and this is what it looks like behind the scenes. This is the code, pretty standard, also tailored to my project. And we have our jobs here: code quality, and then tests. I won't be breaking down this line by line. That could be a totally separate video, but later on, I will get back to this to cover part of the security. Okay, let's take a break from technical part. Design, there is also design. There is all this technical stuff, coding, testing, and on top of this, you have to deal with design. Now, admittedly, I'm not a designer and I'm far removed from it, but here's what my app looks like. I think it is fairly decent for a one-man team. There are a few things that I've done here to approach the design. So one of the things that can help you as well is look into what each color is associated with. As you can see, the main theme of the app is purple that I've selected. There is a color psychology behind it as well. There are basic principles of design that I used that are very helpful, and I've applied them in this app. There are color combinations that you can also look up. And then also, if you're using Cloud Code, then that can help you a lot. It can help assess your design, and it can help you with making it better. Now I want to show you how I dealt with basic security. Now, security is a very important topic that we cannot neglect, and it often starts with guarding the data. And in the specific case of my application, when this API returns questions here, it is not supposed to return the email of the person who asked the question. And during the development phase of the application, there was a problem where it was actually doing this, and I've caught it. And you can imagine that if I was not to fix it, then anyone could go access in the browser to this API and just look at the emails, and that's what can happen. The other type of check that I have in terms of security here is this NPM audit. So basically, I audit for security vulnerabilities, the dependencies that I use in my app. If anything has a level high or above that, then the pipeline job fails and I get notified and I see it, and so that gets fixed. The other aspect of this is obviously now exposing keys, not exposing variables. As you can see, everything is a variable. There is handling of passwords. The most ideal scenario is not to store anyone's password, but if you are storing it, then it should be hashed. Did you think this was over? Now, as a cherry on top, cloud policies and permissions. It's likely that you might be using a cloud service provider, considering that I, for one, used AWS. So let's look at IAM policies. For me to be able to use AWS, for example, database, Dynamo, I need to set up specific policies and rules here. Everything looks pretty simple. You have your dashboard, but initially to set it up, especially if you haven't done it, it actually takes some time and learning. You have a few users and a few roles. I follow the principle of least privileged access. So for example, only my admin user can access the console, and then a few other ones cannot. And this prod user entity, for example, this user has minimal required prod access. What is this? This is a policy that I've created myself and attached it. And that's basically it. And then as you can see, other ones would have their own policies. So it looks simple, but you have different roles here. And so this kind of takes time to set up. Now, this next topic, it often goes unnoticed. I think people don't talk about this enough. Actually, a few topics: website domain and legal. Setting up a domain for my app was pretty easy. Here it is, usehex.app, but I've spent most of my time trying to pick one because most were not even available. Now, this is the final boss, legal. I have privacy policy in terms of use. It's a basic privacy policy. Here it is, and terms of use. And to add terms of use, to generate them, I just used Termly, a pretty simple template. Here it handles all the basic stuff that you need. If you ask me why did I even do it, I did it because I didn't want to be an easy target, even though this is a small app and it didn't have any users. I didn't want to be an easy target for people who try to sue others to make money. And then reason number two, it just makes look my product more professional. As you can see, there are so many things to take into account. In this video, I'm not covering distribution, search engine optimization, or generative engine optimization, but I do have a short where I go over distribution. It's on my channel. Now, of course, I knew that most of this was coming. I'm a quality engineer. I knew I'd need testing, legal, security. But one thing is knowing about this, and then it's a totally different story when you're actually trying to do all of this in the middle of building a product. So whether you're building something or not, subscribe. I share everything I learn and do along the way.